I can still hear the line. "This table is for executives." It wasn't shouted. It was almost whispered. The kind of sentence meant to sound polite while cutting just deep enough to make sure you bleed inside, not outside. The room smelled like money. Dark mahogany, slow jazz, waiters in vests so tight they looked vacuum sealed. The kind of place that didn't print prices on the menu if you were important enough. I wasn't supposed to be there, apparently. My name was on the reservation list. Company offsite, 10 guests, private room, silver oak wine pairing. I'd booked it myself 3 days earlier at Brant's request. "Good optics," he'd said. "We'll make a nice impression on the client." And yet when I arrived, Brant barely looked up from his whiskey. "Oh, hey," he said. "We're full at this table. Why don't you grab one of those high tops by the bar? We'll call you when we need the presentation deck." I froze. Everyone at the long table looked away at the same time, the synchronized cowardice of corporate hierarchy. One of them even gave me that sympathetic half smile that means don't make it awkward. I'm not sure what stung more, the exclusion or how routine it felt. I'd spent 6 years in this company, operations manager, no glamour, no corner office, but the kind of job that kept the lights on while the execs took credit for strategic vision. So I nodded, mumbled something like sure thing, and walked toward the bar. From there I could still see them. Brant, VP of Strategy, self-anointed alpha. Karen from marketing, who used to ask me to fix the printer, despite my title. The CFO laughing loud enough to announce his bonus. They clinked glasses, ordering more wine, more sides, more everything. I watched them eat my entire quarterly budget in one sitting. Around 9:30, Brant waved me over. "Hey, can you just sign for appetizers? The waiter's confused who's paying." I walked to the table, still holding the bar tab I hadn't even opened. The waiter slid the folder toward me, smiling. "Just need your signature, sir." I opened it. Total, 1,287.43. I blinked. "This can't be right. That's—" "The full table, sir," the waiter said softly. "Mr. Brant said you'd handle it." "Company card, yes?" Brant raised his glass. "We'll reimburse you tomorrow, champ." I stood there for maybe 3 seconds too long. Long enough for silence to fall. Long enough for every pair of eyes to turn toward me as if I was making them uncomfortable. Then Karen laughed. "Don't be dramatic. It's a company expense." Right. Except the company card had a $500 limit for managers like me. Anything higher needed 2 approvals. "Split it," I said. "Sorry, sir," the waiter replied. "They asked for 1 check." Something in me snapped, but quietly, the way glass cracks under pressure before it shatters. I pulled my personal card out, felt the weight of it in my hand, the same card that still carried half my student debt. I placed it down and said, "Fine, charge it." When he came back with the receipt, I wrote in the tip line, "Under protest, exec table." Then I signed and pocketed my copy. I walked home instead of taking an Uber. The cold air cut through my shirt. I didn't care. Each step replayed the evening like a reel on loop. The laughter, the shrug, the way Brant's cufflinks glinted when he raised his glass. I kept thinking, this can't be real. No one would believe this happened. So I made sure they would. At midnight, I sat on my couch, still in my dress shoes, and opened the voice memo app. "Friday, March 18th, I said. "Dinner at Morton's, table of 10. Executives only." I was asked to pay. Total $2,087.43. Witnesses: Brant, Karen, CFO. Clients: waiter named Jeff. Manager's name: Vince. Recorded timestamp 9:46 p.m. I stopped, saved the file, then took photos of the bill, the reservation email, even my bank notification. When I finally lay down, I wasn't angry anymore. Just awake. My phone buzzed once, a message from Brant. "Thanks for covering, man. You're a team player. No emoji. No shame." The next morning, I checked my account. The charge was pending. $2,087.43. I stared at it until the numbers blurred, then forwarded the receipt to finance with a note. "Client entertainment expense per VP directive. Please reimburse per policy. Section 4.2. Event approver must be present at time of charge. Attaching documentation. 5 minutes later, I got the auto reply. Your expense report has been received. 5 hours after that, another. Expense denied. Exceeds authorization threshold. Please contact your manager. I didn't. Instead, I printed the emails, stapled the receipt, and slipped them into a manila folder labeled Dinner Ice March 18th. Then I tucked it into my desk drawer under Policy Training 2021. At 6:02 p.m., an HR email arrived. Reminder, conduct and tone in communications reflect on company culture. No mention of the expense, just that line, conduct and tone. That night, I deleted Brant's number, not out of rage, out of clarity. Because something in me knew that when people like him said this table is for executives, what they really meant was this table is for people we can use. I decided I wasn't going to be one of them anymore. So I poured myself a cheap bourbon, opened my laptop, and started outlining the document titled Incident Summary. Dates, times, receipts, everything. Not because I planned revenge, not yet, but because I knew, deep down, that the only way to survive people like Brant was to let them write their own ending, one policy clause at a time. And that's exactly what I planned to do. The following Monday, I walked into the office early, the kind of early that feels like trespassing. The carpet still smelled of industrial cleaner. The lights flickered awake one by one. I wanted to face the week before it had the chance to face me. By 9 a.m., the rumors had already started to crawl through the cubicles. Did you really pay for the exec's dinner? Dude, that's insane. Someone whispered that Brant told finance I'd insisted on paying to make a good impression. That's how the story always twists. A lie that sounds polite enough to survive retelling. At 9:17, I got the calendar invite. Subject: Expense Clarification Meeting. Attendees: HR, Lindsay, Finance, Carl, Brant. Location: Conference Room 4B. Time: 9:30 a.m. sharp. I laughed out loud. Sharp, humorless. They didn't waste time. Inside 4B, Brant was already leaning back, shoes on the carpet, eyes on his phone. Lindsay smiled like she was hosting a tea party. Thanks for coming, Evan. We just want to clear this up. Carl slid a printout across the table. My expense report. Stamped denied. This was a misunderstanding, Brant said. Evan offered to handle it since he booked the restaurant. I didn't interrupt. I let him finish digging. Then I took out my folder, calmly, methodically. Receipts, time-stamped photos, reservation email, Slack message from Brant. The one that said, "Sit with ops, optics matter." I slid them across the table like playing cards. I didn't offer, I said quietly. I was instructed. The waiter confirmed who approved it, and per section 4.2, the approver must be present at time of charge. He was. Brant's smile flickered just slightly. Lindsay tilted her head. Evan, we're not trying to assign blame. We just need to ensure tone and cooperation remain professional. Professional, I repeated. Got it. By the end of the meeting, nothing was resolved. HR promised to review documentation. Brant avoided eye contact. I walked out with the same folder I'd brought in, except now it had an audience. That night, I sent a summary email to HR and finance. Bullet points, attachments, no emotion. I copied legal, quietly, just to see if anyone noticed. The next morning, they noticed. Wednesday, 8:42 a.m. A Teams message from Lindsay. Can you step into my office for a quick chat? She was waiting with that practiced empathy. HR keeps in a jar. Evan, I think some of your recent communications could be misinterpreted as adversarial. We're a collaborative environment. I wanted to ask if collaborative included footing executive dinner bills, but I didn't. Instead, I said, understood. That same afternoon, my inbox pinged again. Subject: Performance Improvement Plan. No greeting, no context. Just a PDF attachment. Inside, 3 paragraphs accusing me of failure to align with leadership expectations, unprofessional tone, and negative influence on team cohesion. Translation, I'd embarrassed the wrong person. I read it twice. Then I printed it, signed my name, and added one note at the bottom. Acknowledged, documentation retained. It wasn't defiance. It was evidence. That Friday, something shifted. A number I didn't recognize called my desk. Is this Evan? Yes. This is Melissa Grant, director at Highland Systems. I was at Morton's that night. Her voice was calm, but edged with something colder. I saw what happened. I saw your VP laugh. We've been questioning our partnership with your company for months. Would you mind meeting for coffee? I didn't breathe for a second. Of course, I said. We met at a corner cafe 2 blocks from the office. She wasn't fishing for gossip. She wanted clarity about processes, deliverables, accountability, all the things Brant never had answers for. I explained what I could, careful not to cross confidentiality lines. She nodded slowly. You're the one who actually runs operations, aren't you? I try, I said. When we stood to leave, she said something I still remember word for word. People like Brant think perception is power. But the people who make things work, you're the leverage. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, reading policy manuals like war manuals. Every clause was a weapon if you knew how to aim it. 2 weeks later, HR held another follow-up. Brant wasn't there this time. Lindsay smiled again, but her eyes darted. We've decided to close the expense matter. Please consider it resolved internally. Resolved how? I asked. The charge won't be reimbursed, but we're noting it as voluntary contribution to team hospitality. Voluntary? I repeated. You mean coerced? Her smile didn't move. I'd advise careful language, Evan. So I gave her careful language. I quoted company policy line by line. Section 4.2, Section 6.1, harassment. Section 9.3, retaliation. Then I ended with, I'll need written confirmation for my records. She blinked. Of course. That weekend, I sat in my apartment surrounded by paper, HR memos, emails, the receipt now laminated just to spite decay. I wasn't even angry anymore, just precise. The kind of clarity that burns slow, like coals under ash. Sunday night, I got an email from a recruiter. Subject line, referral, Highland Systems. Melissa hadn't wasted time. We scheduled a call. The next morning, while Brant was giving another vision alignment presentation to the board, I was in a quiet conference room telling a recruiter exactly how I'd streamline Highland's logistics division in 90 days. When she asked, "Why are you looking to leave?" I smiled. "Cultural misalignment," I said. She laughed softly. "That's the polite way to say toxic leadership, right?" Something like that. The part of me that used to crave approval was gone. What remained was discipline, the same discipline I used to document, to survive, to wait. Because by then I understood something Brant never would. Power isn't who talks the loudest at the table. It's who keeps the receipts after everyone else leaves. 3 weeks later, I handed in my resignation letter. No drama, no speeches, no warnings. Just a white envelope with my name, 2 printed copies, and a single line at the bottom. Effective immediately upon completion of transition. Per contract clause 7.3. Brant was in his glass office when HR called him to discuss a staffing matter. I could see the confusion ripple across his face through the tinted wall, then anger, then disbelief. He stormed out after 5 minutes, waving the paper like a flag. "You can't just leave," he hissed. "You're on a PIP." "I was," I said, "until I wasn't. Check the dates. It expired last Friday." For once, he had no script ready. "Good luck replacing me," I added quietly, not as a threat, but as a fact. 2 hours later, my security badge beeped red on the first try and green on the second. HR had forgotten to deactivate it immediately. I walked through those glass doors one last time, turned left at the marble lobby, and didn't look back. My new desk at Highland Systems was smaller, but the air felt lighter. Melissa greeted me personally, shook my hand, and said, "No one calls me ma'am. We build, we fix, we deliver. That's the culture here." For the first time in months, I believed someone meant what they said. By week 3, I knew their logistics software inside out. I stayed late, not because I had to, but because my brain finally had oxygen. I rebuilt their supply audit process that had been bleeding efficiency for years. Melissa sent a one-line email to the team. "Evan's changes saved us $480K this quarter. Buy him coffee, not cake." I smiled at my screen. Simple, merit-based, honest. Then one morning my phone buzzed, an unrecognized number again. It was the client, the same one who'd been at Morton's that night. "We're moving our business," the director said. "We'd like Highland to handle it. You'll be point of contact, right?" I froze, just long enough for her to add, "We don't work with people who treat their own like props." When I hung up, I stared at the phone until the screen dimmed. It wasn't revenge. It was gravity. Things falling where they were always meant to. Within a month, Brandt's company lost 3 accounts. The CFO left for personal reasons. HR merged into finance. Always a bad sign. My inbox filled with LinkedIn notifications from old coworkers. "Hey, you at Highland now? Are you hiring?" I answered politely but vaguely. I wasn't interested in collecting refugees from a sinking ship. Then came the press release. Highland Systems to acquire Brantwell. Consulting and strategic partnership deal. No numbers, no fanfare, just strategic. Translation, fire sale. Melissa called me into her office. "You know those guys, right?" I nodded. "Then you'll be on the diligence team. I need someone who understands their culture." Her tone made culture sound like a contagious disease. Diligence was a slow kind of justice. We combed through compliance logs, internal audits, expense reports. Half of them were riddled with inconsistencies, ghost vendors, duplicate reimbursements, policy violations hidden under vague expense codes. Then I saw it. Expense ID, 18743, entertainment, 2,143. Description, team, dinner, Morton's Steakhouse. Approver, E. Collins, manager. Reimbursement status, rejected. Flagged by finance auditor, self-review. There it was, fossilized in their own records, my humiliation preserved like amber. "Interesting," said the compliance officer beside me. "This one never got cleared." "Must have slipped through," I said. He frowned. "We'll need to assign responsibility to an approving executive before final integration." He didn't know he'd just handed me the match. When the acquisition closed, Highland inherited all of Brantwell's internal files, liabilities included. I didn't push anything. I didn't leak or whisper. I just made sure the right documents reached the right people. The internal audit team, the ethics committee, the new CFO, the system did the rest. Within 2 weeks, Brandt was transitioned out. The email said he'd chosen to pursue new opportunities. In corporate language, that's the equivalent of a headstone inscription. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt clean, like something had finally stopped festering. One night, Melissa found me still in the office, reviewing integration notes. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, just finishing a report. She studied me for a moment. "You know, you could have buried those people." "You didn't." "I didn't have to," I said. "They buried themselves." She smiled. "Remind me never to owe you money." 3 months after the merger, we hosted a client appreciation dinner. Melissa booked the venue. When I saw the address on the invitation, I laughed out loud. Morton's. Same street, same room. The irony was too sharp to be coincidence. When I walked in, the maitre d' recognized me. "Mr. Collins," he said, voice low. "Good to see you again." "Different company this time," I said. He smiled. "Different tab, too, I hope." I looked around. The room had been renovated, softer lighting, new drapes, but the air still carried that same cologne of old money and quiet cruelty. Except this time, I wasn't standing at the bar. I was at the head of the table. Melissa handed me the seating chart. "You pick where everyone sits," she said. "Your call." For the first time, I realized how heavy a simple privilege could feel. Not as power, but as responsibility. I arranged the name cards alphabetically. No hierarchy, no executive side. Then halfway through the dinner, a familiar face appeared at the doorway. Brant. Not as a guest, as a consultant for a vendor we'd subcontracted. His badge hung lopsided, his smile stiff. He froze when he saw me. The waiter approached me quietly. "Mr. Collins, should I set another place?" I glanced at the table. "No, but make sure he gets a drink on the house. Call it closure." Brant nodded once across the room, a silent truce he hadn't earned. Then he turned and left before dessert. As the door swung shut, I exhaled. For the first time, the room didn't feel smaller than me. Later that night, as I walked out into the cool air, the maitre d' called after me, "Mr. Collins, you left something here once." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a copy of that original 2001 87 Mard receipt, yellowed and creased. "We found it in our old files when we renovated," he said. "Figured you'd want it back." I looked at it, smiled, and slid it into my coat pocket. "Yeah," I said, "I think I finally do." The next time I saw Brant, it wasn't at Morton's. It was 3 months later, in a conference room with glass walls and too many suits pretending not to sweat. The acquisition had finalized, integration was messy, and Highland had sent me to smooth transitions for the remaining Brantwell staff. He was there, sitting at the far end of the table, wearing the same smirk that once passed for confidence. But it didn't land anymore. His tie was crooked, his eyes darted. He looked smaller, like a man who'd forgotten how to fill his own reputation. When he saw me, his mouth twitched. "Didn't expect to see you running this circus," he said, trying for charm. I smiled. "I learned from the best." He laughed, but it sounded like paper tearing. The meeting lasted 40 minutes. Corporate language, integration timelines, non-disclosure agreements. But beneath every polite phrase was a current of silent irony. He used to sit at the head of the table. Now he waited for my approval to speak. When it ended, I gathered my notes, stood, and said evenly, "Good seeing you again, Brant. I'll be coordinating the compliance follow-up. You'll hear from audit soon." He blinked. "Audit? Routine review?" I said. "Policy clause 4.2, expense carryovers." His smile faltered. He understood exactly what that meant. A week later, I got an internal memo from accounting. Per ethics reconciliation, unapproved entertainment expense, ID 18743, has been reassigned to former approver per clause, 4.2.1. Please confirm record retention. I didn't even need to write the name. They already had it. The next day, I received a forwarded email by accident from Brant to HR. This must be a mistake. That charge was team-related. I wasn't the payer. HR's response was one line. Per documentation, approver present at time of charge is personally liable. The silence that followed was better than any apology. Then came the dinner. Highland organized a formal celebration. The post-merger integration dinner, the company's way of saying, "We survived the chaos." Melissa insisted on hosting it at Morton's again. "Full circle," she said with a grin. This time, I arrived first. Same restaurant, same mahogany walls, same low hum of jazz, but it didn't feel hostile anymore. The maitre d' saw me and smiled warmly. "Mr. Collins, good to have you back. The executive table?" I smiled. "Not tonight, just one long table. Everyone together." When the team arrived, there was laughter instead of hierarchy. Engineers sat beside VPs, admins beside directors. No name cards, no invisible fences. Halfway through the evening, as the servers cleared plates and poured another round, the maitre d' approached me quietly. "A delivery just came in for you, sir. Special request." He handed me a flat, wrapped object, black frame, silver lining. I knew before I opened it. The old receipt, framed, centered on the white matte background like a museum artifact. Pinned under the glass, in my handwriting, were the words, "Under protest. Exectable." I almost laughed. Then I noticed a note taped to the back. "Courtesy of Morton's management. We keep records, too." Melissa glanced over. "What's that?" "Just an old bill," I said. "Frame it," she said. "Put it in your office as a reminder." I did, but not for the reason she thought. Toward the end of the night, I saw Brant again. He'd shown up late, wearing an ill-fitting blazer, clutching a badge labeled External Consultant. His company, what was left of it, had been absorbed as a third-party vendor. He hesitated at the entrance. The waiter recognized him before I did. "Mr. Brant?" the waiter asked. "We have something for you." The room quieted just a little as the waiter handed him an envelope. Inside, a single page. The same $2,187.43 expense, now formally reassigned to him under the ethics policy he'd signed himself 3 years ago. Accounting had charged it directly to his severance. His face went pale, the kind of pale that no lighting could hide. He looked around, at me, at Melissa, at the table full of laughter, then forced a small, broken grin. "Guess I'm still paying for dinner," he muttered. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Seems fair," she said lightly and turned back to her conversation. Brant stood there for a moment longer, then placed the envelope down and left. No scene, no words, just the quiet sound of his footsteps disappearing into the hallway. When the night ended, I lingered behind as the team filed out. The waiter brought the check, smaller this time, but heavy with meaning. I took the pen, paused, and signed it without hesitation. No notes, no protest, just my name. As I handed the folder back, I said to the waiter, "Do me a favor. The plaque outside, the one that says Executive Dining Room." "Yes, sir." "Change it. Put, 'This table is for the people who did the work.'" He smiled. That quiet, knowing kind of smile you only see from someone who's witnessed both arrogance and justice in the same room. "I'll make sure it's done," he said. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp, just like that first walk home months ago, except this time there was no weight in my chest. The streetlights shimmered off the rain-polished pavement. The city hummed, indifferent and alive. I took out my phone and opened the voice memo app again. "June 14th, I said softly. "Dinner at Morton's, all departments, no titles. Bill paid in full. Lesson: tables don't make people important. People make the table worth sitting at." I stopped recording. For a moment, I thought about deleting that first memo, the one from the night of the humiliation. But I didn't. I wanted both of them to exist, the before and the after. The proof that respect isn't given by title or by room. It's reclaimed. As I walked away, I passed by the restaurant window. Through the glass, I could see my reflection, not angry, not triumphant, just steady. Maybe that's what real revenge is. Not fire, not fury, just peace, earned honestly and served cold. Or maybe, if you ask Morton's staff, it's best described another way. Karma, served medium rare.